in Fort Lauderdale, I don't know where to start. One of my favorites, though, is Pompano Beach. It has new beachfront developments, and it's becoming a stronger contender for investment.
When they do a market analysis, they do it from the standpoint as a short-term rental, and I really think that's a big mistake because to be a good investment, that property needs to stand alone as a long term. Selling one or two properties a year and it's not really into investing, they're not going to have a clue. How do you attract or generate leads? Welcome back, my beautiful people. Today, I got a special guest. I've known this beautiful young lady for a while now. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but quickly, just so you guys know, one of the reasons why I'm bringing her on to the podcast is because of her sales experience. Kimberly has been in sales for over 20 years. She's been an entrepreneur. I'm going to let her go into what she was doing before she got into real estate. But without further ado, Kim, tell us who you are and what you're about.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. I'm honored. Um, so I am Kim Thomason. I have been a realtor since 2015. However, prior to that and up until recently, I was an entrepreneur. I owned a family business, a vacuum cleaner store for over 20 years. So owner operating, we had multiple locations at one point. I built a brand and I was able to then in later years build that brand big enough and sell it. So that was exciting. And then that is what took me full time into real estate.
Awesome. I like that. So what was the transition like? What was the two things? What was the transition like, and why real estate?
Well, back in 2015, the vacuum cleaner industry is kind of a dying industry. It's not those mom and pop stores that people don't buy vacuums and get them repaired as much anymore, or buy vacuums from a mom and pop store like that. So I decided to go into real estate. I always had an interest in it. When I moved to Florida in 2009, I even thought about doing it then. But there were stores for sale in the area. So my dad and I bought the vacuum cleaner stores instead, since that was something I knew. But real estate is sales and helping people. So, and that's what I love to do. So it was an easy choice.
Cool. Now, so 2015 is when you actually got into real estate. But so since 2015 till now, how have you seen the South Florida market evolve?
Wow. I mean, it's changed so much. Every year it changes. And especially from 2020, obviously, to 2022, mortgage rates were low and it made it financing more affordable for people. Then there's the migration trends that were happening as well in that time period. And prior to that, you didn't see it as much. I mean, everybody moves to Florida. I moved to Florida. Lots of people like to move to Florida, but as the years went on, those migrations just got more and more. People from New York and California and Illinois were relocating for our tax benefits and our warmer climate and the more affordable living that we provide here. And also in that time period, work from home shift, that whole thing where everybody now can work from anywhere. So why not move to a place that's beautiful and warm? But yeah, every year it changes a little bit in one way or another.
Yeah. I mean, it's I've been doing this for a long time and I always tell the story. I started buying properties back in 2000, in the early, or in the 90s, but actually looking at it from an investment standpoint in like 2005, and then we went to 2008 and 2009. Everything, the real estate market in Florida, like took a big hit. So, from an investor standpoint, uh, again, going and from your experience in 2015 until now, have you seen a shift? What's different?
Yeah, what's different is more people are trying to invest down here. I is what I'm finding. I mean, it when I moved here in 2009, and we were right there at the end of, the prices were super low, but even though the prices have been coming up since 2009, I still feel like investors want to invest in Florida, and more more than ever.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. I said this a lot that for years, Florida's market was way undervalued. Hence why I spent a lot of time, or I invested a lot in South Florida, particularly, and a lot of my investors bought a lot of properties in South Florida because it really was undervalued. Um, it's it's even with interest rates, like today, I think the market is where it should be in Florida. We're not
Hmm.
undervalued anymore, but we're also still not overvalued.
Hmm.
So it's to do well as an investor in Florida is a little harder today than it was, let's just say prior to 2000, right? 2020, prior to 2020, a little harder today to invest in Florida. So what do you think, or what are you seeing that investors are looking at to invest in South Florida?
Like types of properties, is that what
Yes,
you're?
like I'm sorry, like
Okay.
types of properties.
Yeah. So I see a lot of investors looking for rental income, whether it be long term or vacation rental, and then also some multifamily as well. But vacation rental to me is what stands out the most.
Yeah, there's. I mean, obviously, that's my expertise.
Hmm.
There's now, and there's a double-edged sword there because a lot of people, especially now with the interest rates being high, finding a great deal that's under market value has become difficult because a lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon. And I think one of the mistakes that people make is that when they do a market analysis, they do it from the standpoint as a short-term rental. And I really think that's a big mistake because to be a good investment, that property needs to stand alone as a long-term rental, not as a short-term rental, because a lot can happen in the industry. There's still, the short-term rental industry, although it really people think it's new, it's not new. I remember even before Airbnb existed, in the early '90s, we had, but back then it was referred to as seasonal rentals because we would get a lot of Canadians come down, they'll rent properties. A lot of vacationers were looking to stay here for a couple of months, and we would list properties but list them as seasonal, right?
Hmm.
So um, today it's a little bit more difficult. So can you explain how how fluctuation in the economy and in interest rates affect the behavior of some investors?
Yeah, just like you said, they're navigating these higher interest rates, but our long term prospects remain solid because Florida is a desirable place, and we also have great economic fundamentals. So, I think it just takes the right investor. You can't just go get a 7% loan and expect to buy a $600,000 home and be able to be profitable on it. But um, it's about long term though. It's about the fact that long term you're going to have a great investment because Florida's, in my opinion, always a great place to invest in.
And that's a very, very important point there. I've been interviewing a lot of realtors and a lot of people, a lot of real estate investors lately on my podcast. Um, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Real estate, when you're investing in real estate, especially and again, this is my opinion, but I firmly believe that if you are a long-term investor at any investment, I don't care if it's in real estate, in the stock market, in crypto, you should be thinking long term, not short term.
Mhm.
So, as an example, I don't consider flippers as investors in real estate. That's just they're not looking long term; they're looking short term. And for me, that's just a job. That's not really an investment. They
Mhm.
created a nice niche for themselves where they can become profitable, but it's a business. It's not an investment. As a real estate investor, again, you should be thinking long term. So even if, and I've said this before because it happened to me. I just did not a podcast. I did a video, and I used David Green. For those that don't know who he is, he's a real estate investor. He used to be part of the Bigger Pocket podcast. I used him as an example as well. That even if you make a mistake in buying a property that is overvalued, um, as long as you hold it long enough, you're going to come out on top. But again, you have to have that long-term mentality in order for it to work. So I agree with you 100%. It has to be a long-term vision, and it's I tell people all the time, buy property and hold it because you'll be fine.
Mhm.
You shouldn't wait to buy property. You should buy it and wait.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so next question on that is what particular neighborhoods or areas do you believe are prime for investors right now?
There are so many in Fort Lauderdale. I don't know where to start. One of my favorites, though, is Pompano Beach. It has new beachfront developments, and it's becoming a stronger contender for investment. Um, the areas are affordable, more affordable than Miami and Fort Lauderdale, but you're still near the hub over there. Um, Another would be, this might be out of left field here, but we have an aging population who retire here. So for an investor who wants to do um, rentals long term, maybe in a 55 plus community, I think
Wow.
that's it's just where things are going, and some of these new 55 and older communities are really really hip, and they have the pickleball and all the things. So if they're allowed to have rentals in them, that might be out of left field way to go to as well. But you have your tried and trues, Las Olas and Flagler Village and Victoria Park. They all have their benefits, being close to downtown Fort Lauderdale and all of that. So yeah.
That's you just taught me something, and something that I'm thinking now because I have not thought about the 55 and older community, and you're correct. There is opportunity there, or at least I believe there could be opportunity there. So kudos for you for thinking about that because that's something that I am positive that that a lot of people listening to this have not even thought about. So that's interesting. I'm gonna have to take a look at that. So
There happens to be a lot of distressed properties, I feel like I've found in those areas. So, I know we're not talking fix and flip type people, but even if you remodeled and brought that property up to good standards and then rented it out, there's huge opportunity there for people want to be around like-minded people with the same activity level. So these 55 and older communities are hot.
And now that you say that, because I'm thinking back when I first got my license. I believe my very first listing was in a 55 and older community in Sunrise Lakes,
Uh-huh.
um, and even going further back than that. Here's a interesting story. So my mother, when I brought her to Florida, I was obviously looking for a place for her to stay, and Sunrise Lakes, there's condos there that I was thinking about buying for her, and back then you were able to pick one of those up for like $10,000, $12,000, and So we looked at them. My mother decided she didn't want that. We went down to Miami, got our place in Miami. But then fast forward to when I got my real estate license and I got my first listing, I listed and sold one of those properties for $30,000. And then
Mhm.
today, if you look at those listings, because I've looked at them since, they don't sell for less than 150 and up.
Yeah.
So huge returns on those. The equity, I mean, the growth on those condos, I believe that if I do the research and look overall in 55 and older communities, especially the older 55 and older communities, that we're going to see the same equity growth in those properties. So you're 100% right. You know, and again, going back to whether you're going to fix and flip or you're going to buy a property and hold it,
Mhm.
as a buy and hold investment, man, if you would have bought again, and I'm not going back that far. I'm going back as I think it was 10 years ago when we looked there, and there was maybe a little bit more, maybe about 15 years ago, and those
Mhm.
condos were going under 15,000. Now they're over 150,000 in 10 years. You're not getting a return like that in the stock market,
Right.
So yeah, something definitely to think about. Um, so in terms, and I'm going to stay on the topic on investing here, but what do you think are some of the common mistakes that investors, or not even investors? Let's talk about people buying real estate in South Florida. What's one or two common mistakes that people are making when they're buying real estate?
Just like you said, it's the same thing. Investors or buyers, the first thing a lot of people don't understand are the expenses. Insurance is, up in Illinois or up north, you might pay $1,000 a year. Here, you have to expect to pay at least $4,000 a year and up. And 4,000 would be a smaller, less expensive home. And taxes, yes, our taxes are probably a lot less than a lot of Northerners, but they're still there. So, and especially if this is an investment, you're not getting homestead on it. So taxes are going to be a little bit more. And utilities, I mean, AC running all year round, you have to account for that. Um, some investors get a property and don't realize, maybe it doesn't have the right insulation and all of that. So it's those little expenses that people just don't understand. And back to taxes, one thing that I get a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, this property has $3,000 taxes." I'm like, "Yeah, this year." But in 1 year it'll be reassessed, and it will be reassessed based off the price you're paying, and it's going to go up. So you have to think about that ahead of time.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So when I'm working with an investor and where they're, oftentimes they'll run the numbers themselves, and when they give me the projections and I look at them, I'm like, no, you're way off. And the
Yeah.
reason they're way off is, and we'll touch on taxes first, is because like you mentioned, it gets assessed at the purchase price. And most
Mhm.
people that are selling today have had their properties for more than 10 years or right around 10 years or
Right.
more. And that's when the Florida market was undervalued. So they had, and especially if they had that property for a very long time. And for those that don't know, if a property is homesteaded in Florida, and it applies in general, um, it could only go up so much, and I believe it's 3% or so. Uh, that's at the highest it can go up. But when it's not homesteaded, then it can go up, whatever. But sometimes the numbers are higher, depend on how quickly the property is appreciating. So you're right. They make that mistake of not evaluating the numbers correctly because they're not understanding taxes. They're not understanding insurance, and insurance is super high. Uh, and the other thing they're not, like you mentioned, especially if they're looking to convert that property to a short-term rental, they're not understanding what operating cost is in a short-term rental. Obviously, you're
Yep.
paying utilities, which goes up a lot when they do that. So
A lot of times those short-term renters, they'll leave the doors wide open and the AC down to 68. Like those are things you just can't, you have to account for and have to think about. They're not going to treat your home like you treat it.
exactly, exactly. That's a big one. That's why, like for example, the properties that we manage and or own, we have smart thermostats. And I try whenever I manage somebody's property. That's the first thing I tell them. I said if they can convert the thermostat to a smart thermostat so that we can lock it, and keep it so that it can't put that AC lower than 70, because we've learned through experience that when it's lower than 70 and somebody opens the window or opens the door and leaves the AC going, it freezes up the unit. So,
Yeah.
those little things are hugely important, but you're right, people forget. Uh, as a short-term rental, your utilities will go up, and it's going to depend on your guest as well. So we have to take that into account. Um, Now, here's a very important question, and I'm going to throw you a softball here because hopefully you can hit this question out of the park. Uh, when an investor is looking for a real estate agent to work with, what qualities should that investors be looking at for that agent?
Local market expertise. You need to know the areas. Um, Strong negotiation skills, a honest and integrity. There are so many agents out there and lots of people have their license, but it doesn't mean that they know the industry and have these skills. Um, Having an extensive network is super important. That's part of why I joined EXP, because of the network of people, especially in this area in Florida. And the normals, being proactive, responsive, ready to go.
Yeah, I can't express that enough, people. Um, and I don't know the numbers, but I know the numbers are super high. And if you know the numbers, Kim, let us know. But in Florida, South Florida specifically, there are so many people with a real estate license. In fact, I would bet that whoever's watching, they know at least one or two real estate agents, right?
Mhm.
But not all agents are created equal, and who
Mhm.
you work with matters. And especially when you're dealing with, when you're trying to buy real estate as an investment, you need someone that really understands the market. Just
Mhm.
like Kim said, they have to understand or have a very strong knowledge as it relates to the area, what areas are prime for quicker appreciation, what real estate agents really understand, what the qualities of a good residential property that can be a good investment. All those things come into account. And if you have an agent that's only selling one or two properties a year and it's not
Mhm.
really into investing, they're not going to have a clue. Uh,
Right.
so
Something
so
else
that's hugely important.
Something else here in South Florida, though, because we are so densely populated, a lot of people want an agent that works in such and such community. Well, that community, it that's how it can be in other areas where, yes, this agent specializes in this one community, but we can go 5 minutes and be in another city very quickly. So I feel like us as agents in Florida, we can specialize in what seems to be a larger area and still be very local, have our local knowledge. Our local area is pretty pretty large. So, I can do Cooper City and Southwest Ranches, Fort Lauderdale, Davie. That's a lot of different cities. Whereas in other parts of the country, some people are just doing one city because of how densely populated they aren't. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it makes sense, and that's you're dead on with that. Um, Now, you mentioned you're with EXP. I'm with EXP. I'm a big fan of EXP, and you mentioned the network. So tell us what brought you. Number one, what brought you to EXP? What is your top three reasons as to what really got you to come to EXP?
Well, trust me, I researched every company out there and I researched it for over 6 months and I spoke to many different companies. But one of the things that really drew me to EXP was the community that it brings. I wanted like minded people that will help, it, bring me up in my sales and in my skills. And EXP also offers, well, our group offers amazing training and coaching. So that was really important. Even though I've been in the industry since 2015, just like anything else, you need to continue your education and you need to continue to change the way you do things. So having that coaching support was huge.
Yeah, I want to touch on that because I tell Kim has been in realtor for a long time. She has a lot of experience, and so do I. A lot of people in EXP are the same. I mean, we have within our group we have multiple agents that have done 100 plus transactions per year, but we still get coaching. I still
Mm-hmm.
think, regardless of who you are, you still need a coach. You still need to constantly be educating yourself because the market never stays stagnant, right? Michael Jordan, the best that ever played basketball, had a coach. Tiger Woods
Mm-hmm.
has a coach. Even the best of the best, they have coaches. And in our group, the Elite Builders, we have some of the best coaches in the industry. We have some of the best trainings in the industry, and it's broad because, and I know Kim, you just got to the group, but for example, one of the biggest things one of the things that I'm a fan of, and that I constantly do, and that I recommend people do is role playing. We
Mm-hmm.
have a group that you can hop on and role play, role play, role play, because that makes you better. The better you practice, the better you get. And the way I like to say it is the perfect practice makes perfect agents, right? So you got to get critiqued. If you don't have someone else looking at what you're doing, you may think you're doing something right, but there may be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Now, there's another component, and this was primarily the reason why I came to EXP, is because I'm older than Kim, and I'm at a stage in my life in which I'm not looking for another paycheck, but I am looking for a way to continue to receive money, even if I'm not selling real estate. And
Mm-hmm.
and with EXP, I have the ability to do that. As long as my license is valid, I'm going to, monthly, I'm still going to receive the paycheck based on rev share. And I think rev share within EXP is the best there is. And the last thing I'll say about EXP is that, um, and we're seeing it over and over again, the old brick and mortar standard brokerage are you're seeing them less and less. There's going to be a big shift, and that you already start to see the shift in the market. And everything has to be cloud based, technology based. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. So, you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, yeah. So that's one of the things I thought I needed. I thought I needed an office where I can collaborate with other agents, but sometimes I also found that to be very distracting. So as I thought about this transition more and more, I thought, wow, it's not the office that I need, it's the people. And now there are so many, and just in the last week that I've been getting to know EXP's systems and things like that, the ways to collaborate with other agents virtually are innumerable. Like there's so many different ways. They have, Workspace and EXP World, like so many different ways to just bounce ideas off of people. And that's pretty neat without having to leave your home. And then the other thing I was going to say was I was very hesitant about EXP's rev share and all of that. It worried me. Years and years ago, I sold Tupperware. It was one of those things that I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't wrap my head around it very quickly, and it took some time, but it makes sense now that I've thought about it. And it's the stipulation that is probably put on it by a lot of agents and myself in the past is not true. It's just a great way to transition your business one day. And I see such great opportunity that, yes, I love well, we don't put people in our cars anymore, but that's what we say, putting people, going and showing homes and having listings and all of that. But I can see myself in 10 years, 20 years being successful with coaching and building a team. So it's nice to have
Yeah.
the opportunity.
Trust me, when you get to my age, you're going to want to do that. Because I was in the same boat. I was exactly in the same boat. I in the beginning was like, no, I don't want to coach. I just want to sell. I'm going to do this for a long time. But man, you get to a point in which you don't want to. You're not going to want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So having said that, what do you think is the biggest challenge that you face in your career? And well, let's backtrack. Let's talk about what were the challenges that you were facing and how did you overcome that?
I think one of the biggest challenges and one of the things that stopped me from going full time into real estate, and we talked about this earlier, was the fact that there are so many agents out there. And I, even just this past weekend, I was talking with some customers and the things they were saying about realtors in general, because there are so many agents, anybody can get licensed. There's no criteria to what you need to know. You don't have to have customer service skills. I mean, you do, but you don't have to get licensed. So I think that was one of the things that was hard to navigate, was the fact that I was one of so many agents out there that were not necessarily giving us the best rep. So I just overcome it by focusing on the fact that I know who I am. I know my background and education and how what I bring to the table is way different than most other agents, between marketing and knowledge and customer service and my willingness to go like above and beyond. So hopefully people will see that. But it breaks my heart when people get stuck with an agent who doesn't have that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a great point because that happens a lot, and it is part of Unfortunately, it is part of the industry. I mean, we see it every day. Like you mentioned, anybody can get a license, and then on the same token, even agents that are seasoned and been around for a while, for whatever reason, and I see it in South Florida a lot, man. And I used to hate it, and you probably remember and attest to this. There's some agents that I can't freaking stand. And, you're an agent. If I text you and I have a buyer and that buyer is interested in your listing,
Mm-hmm.
man, respond.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hated that. So but yeah, but having said that, because I want to stay on that, you brought up some an interesting point there, because it can get very frustrating. So what do you do to stay motivated, and what inspires you to keep going, and especially when you have to deal with some of the challenges in the industry?
Well, I mean, just like I said, I know my worth. What inspires me is helping people and making sure that I do it to my fullest and I go above and beyond for my customers. But And I mean, just standing out in that way, being my true, genuine self makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and and I'm a self motivated person, so I never look for outside. I never had a need to look for outside motivation. But
Mhm.
but man, like I said, there was times where I was like, oh, why do I have to deal with these people? Uh, Extremely difficult there. Now,
Well,
let's
getting,
move on to you
yes.
and and tell me, like, outside of real estate, what other interests and hobbies do you have?
Well, I'm a dog mom. So my one of my biggest interests is I do agility competitions and with a couple of my dogs right now. And I'm a competitive person by nature, whether it be in my career or outside of it. So I also do fitness competitions and things like that. But actually, that was one of the things that I was just that Fort Lauderdale actually has a need for right now is there is no local place in Fort Lauderdale that so investors listen up. There are we are us as an agility community are looking for a facility that is large enough and air conditioned with good turf to do agility. And there were so many venues that have come and gone throughout the years um, that weren't air conditioned, but still that was fine. Like the rodeo grounds, they used to do agility there, but now the footing is no longer good enough and safe. Tropical Park just pulled out. They're not a something about they're redoing Tropical Park, but the agility community is huge, and dog people we're crazy in the best way, and we're just it's a lot of fun. So, and we're just looking for a local place. People are going from Fort Lauderdale all the way over to Punta Gorda every week just to practice agility in a air conditioned, beautiful facility. It's it's somebody needs to make this for us.
Well, that's interesting. Do you and I don't want to put you on the spot because it's I didn't know you were going to bring this up, but do you
Sorry.
happen to know what the numbers like? What is how large is the community?
Oh my goodness. So on any given weekend, I mean, people travel all over the country for these types of things. Dog people, they bring their $200,000 RVs with them and park
Wow,
for a weekend and might have multiple dogs, and they might be spending upwards of $200 per dog per weekend on the agility trial, not to mention any type of practices that go on during the week, or they bring in specialized coaches to do trainings. It's it's a big business. I mean, figure some people have 4 or 5 dogs that they run in one weekend. They come and stay. It's and they come from all over. Not, like I said, just 2 weekends ago, I went over to Punta Gorda and stayed the weekend and participated in agility. But there's probably a few hundred dogs running per day.
wow! Investors,
So,
listen up, listen up.
yeah, we need you.
That's
We need you. I'll help you find a place. But
yeah.
yeah, we need it.
Okay, so let's that's a good segue to my next question is how do you stay what are the what trends, what outside of the box ways do you see in areas in real estate that people can invest in that either what's trending or what's because that's an outside of the box way to invest in real estate. What other ways can people invest in real estate?
Yeah, so that's one of them. I mean, the commercial side is not always thought about, doing a commercial space like that, and so that's one of them. And then, like I said earlier, that 55 plus segment, and finding properties where you can that they tend to be a little bit more affordable. But if you can invest in a 55 plus, because um, that's that's where Florida's going. So I mean, it's always been there, right? It's always been a 55. Let's go retire to Florida, but now it's becoming a little more trendy. It's not so, oh, this is where we go to retire and then possibly pass away one day. It's more like, let's go and live our life 55 plus.
Yeah, the more. I've seen it. I've seen it in the parks. More and more older people like pickleball is like the new fad. I mean, I actually played in pickleball recently for the first time, and it is a very fun game. So,
How'd you
well,
do?
I'm very competitive, and I lost, so that sucked.
Oh no.
but but it was a fun game. It was definitely a fun game. So
Yeah.
I got two more questions for you. The first one is looking ahead. Where do you see the South Florida real estate market? Let's say for the within the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see it going?
I feel like there's going to be an increased demand for multifamily and rental properties. Right now, a lot of these HOA communities really restrict a lot of that. But I think that that's something that in our area they're going to need. Um, it's going to continue. The second home market is going to continue to rise here. A lot of people will buy their second homes here and use them for rentals or short term rentals. Yeah, I think that's in the next 5 to 10 years. That's probably a couple of the things to be looking for in the change. I mean, our population is growing. So many people are moving here. So that's why, the multifamily, more condos and more rentals are going to be needed.
Okay, and then the last question is, what advice would you give a brand new agent that wants to tap into uh, and work with investors?
What advice would I give them? Just become extremely knowledgeable of your area and of your local market. You need to know every single neighborhood back and forth. You you need to be hyper local and knowledgeable about your area.
Okay, and I said that was going to be the last question, but I just forgot to ask you a very, very important question, which is, how do you attract or generate leads?
Oh, so many ways. Oh my goodness, so many ways. But I mean, I'm always listening. I'm always talking to people, listening, asking questions. There's deals out there that you don't even know about, and it may not be a deal tomorrow, but it's someone who looking to maybe get married, and you just establishing great relationships, genuine relationships with people. But the best way that I find that I enjoy, I really like being social media, not just social in real life, but social media. Um, Generating leads that way is been pretty awesome. And people get to know you through social media, and then get to understand what you're about, and then they want to work with you. And that's what I like. I'm able to touch more people through that, and they get to know who I am, and then when they're ready, I'm there for them.
Yeah, great advice, and you're 100% right. One of the things that I always say as well is people do business with people they know and trust. And how you
Mhm.
build trust? Networking and through your social media. Going
Mhm.
out there. Any closing thoughts?
No, I just want to say thanks. Thanks for having me on this. This was exciting and nerve-wracking all at the same time, but if anybody's looking for real estate in the Fort Lauderdale area, I'm your girl.
Yeah. So Real quick, just how can people find you?
Oh, multi-state real estate is my Instagram, Kimberly.Thomason on YouTube, and Kimberly Thomason Realtor on Facebook.
Awesome. I'm going to put all her information down in the description below. If you have any questions or comments, either reach out directly to her or put them in the comments. People, don't forget, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit that notification bell. Follow me on Instagram. Buy me a coffee if you want to have a conversation. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.